Okay, so I'm going to walk you through my online module for a unit of language arts instruction centered around mystery genres. When you log into the class, it looks like this. It says the class name at the top and my name underneath. It starts with an announcement, which asks students to start by selecting your passport to learning. All other activities will flow from this unit. So they can just scroll down and click on the passport to learning. And what pops up is a blocked passport. So the case study I chose had blocked periods of 55 minutes every day. Um, this module is blended learning. It's also asynchronous, meaning that students can move through it at their own pace. Um, one of the first sources that I used was about improved lesson planning with universal design for learning, and that was by Susan Corey. And she really spoke to the fact that it's sometimes hard to implement UDL units because there's all these other constraints that you have to account for, like school languages and routines and curriculum and tech constraints. And so, what I wanted to do was make sure that this was actually really conducive to my school environment in particular. So, for example, we're driven by the Common Core standards. So, I chose 6 of them. And they are listed on the side here, which drove the lessons. Also keeping in mind that UDL components of multiple means of representation and expression were also incorporated in each activity. One of the other things that our students have to do is work on Lexia, which is a reading program online. So I tried to use it here as a way for if students were waiting to conference with me or needed my help, they could always log on to Lexia. Because this is something they can do on their own. So it fits nicely in that it's something they can do while they're waiting for me. So another thing is the learn, practice, apply. That's language that we use at the school. So I tried to incorporate it on this document as well. The first activity that I wanted them to do was start with the "And Then There Was One" story. This is a short mystery story. And I wanted them to start off just by reading this story and then going to our Google chat page. This is shared with the whole class where they predict what will happen next. So the story was stopped at a place where students could have the opportunity to predict who the culprit is or where the story is going to go. And they could put their name, prediction, and then some comments. After that, I want them to work with a partner to underline contractions and past tense verbs. This comes from the second source I used was using evidence-based multimedia to improve vocabulary performance of adolescents with LD. That was by Michael Kennedy. And he really suggests that when using UDL, you use a combination of multimedia approaches for things like vocabulary and grammar instruction, as well as more traditional methods like underlining things in stories or traditional paper and pencil exercises. So after they underlined in the story the words, I wanted them to go to Quizlet, which is multimedia, and have them use that same word or the same vocabulary words from the story, and they can type the past tense version, match these words together. So that's just a fun way for them to continue to learn the vocabulary words. Afterwards, I wanted them to follow the tic-tac-toe board, which involves them choosing 3 activities here. This really gets at, allowing students to express their understanding of the material in a way that they feel suits their strengths. It's also a way to plan for learner variability. So some of the things on here are creating a video diary, a thought map, acting out a scene from the story, etc. There's 9 choices. What I wanted them to do when they're done with that is use the conference sign-up sheet. So this is a way for me to know and for them to know when they're going to have time to meet with me about their assessment piece at the end, their apply section. Another way that I wanted to tie this into my school culture is that this scoring rubric is something that we use for everything. And if I were to implement this unit, I would have to use this same rubric. And, the kids know what it means to be out of 5, which is complete conceptual understanding, or anywhere else on the list as well. The second part is formatted the same way, 2 new learning targets, but again, Lexia time. And there are 2 videos, a mystery genre video. He goes through some key elements of mystery genres, as well as a mystery vocab video. This again gets at the multimedia approach to vocabulary learning. And then I wanted them to create a fake book profile template, which fills in information using the vocabulary words they just went over from the perspective of the main character of the story. After this, one of the targets is creating audio recordings to clarify ideas. And so I wanted to, as our assessment piece, interview them as the main character, again with the conference sheet and the scoring rubric. And then the C block, again with Lexia. And then there's going to be some things that are going to require whole class or small group instruction. In particular, here I chose learning about concluding statements. So after they get a really solid grasp of that, they can go here and answer one of these 3 questions. This again addresses, learner variability. So one of the questions is easier than the other 2, and one of them is harder than the other 2. Let's see. After that, they are going to read the ending of the story. I tried to save that sort of towards the end so that there could be some suspense, fits with the theme. After they get the ending of the story, they're going to research their own real life example and have an opportunity to share that with me and then with the class. The last thing I read about was called Invited In, Measuring UDL and Online Learning by Sean Smith. And this sort of spoke to the piece that there's a lot of these online platforms like Khan Academy or like BrainPop that are trying to get at this UDL approach to learning, but ultimately it needs to be moderated by a teacher in a classroom and also have activities that involve students working with each other within the classroom community, so it's not a bunch of students working in isolation, asynchronously moving through, their own path, because that's not exactly what UDL is either. So I wanted to be, conscious of including whole class activities, small group activities, partner work, and then that individualized work that allows them to be exactly where they need to be.